Welcome to Coyote's Corner. This episode we'll be listening to Michael Lang tell a Grimm's fairy tale, The Mouse, the Bird, and the Sausage.
There was once a mouse, a bird, and a sausage, who were the best of friends. They lived together in a small cottage on the edge of the forest. Every morning, the bird would spread his beautiful wings of purple and blue and set out into the forest, fluttering here and there amongst the tall pines as he searched for firewood. While the bird was gone, the mouse would go to the well behind their cottage and fetch a pail of water. But when the bucket was full, it was too heavy for the mouse to carry. He would strain and heave with all his might, dragging the bucket back to the house. Then he and the sausage would work together to pour the water into the pot that sat upon the stove. The mouse, exhausted from his chores, would then go and take a nap, while the sausage set to work making the stew for their evening meal. He would bring the water to a boil, add rice and vegetables, and throughout the day he would lift the lid of the pot, checking on the stew now and again. In the evening, the bird would return, and he would make a fire in the cottage's cozy fireplace. The mouse would soon awake from his nap and set the table for dinner. When the meal was almost ready to serve, the sausage would lift the lid of the pot one last time, then plunge himself into the boiling water, letting the oil of his thick skin flavor the stew. The three friends would then eat their dinner, say their good nights, and go to bed. And so it was, day after day, for months, for years they lived together, happy and content. But one day, while the bird was out gathering firewood, he came upon another bird, and she watched him, cocking her head curiously as he gathered up branches and twigs. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Oh, I'm gathering firewood." The other bird was quite confused, and so the bird explained how he gathered firewood every day and brought it back to the cottage where he and his friends lived. He explained how the three of them had divided up their chores so no one would have to do all the work. When the other bird heard this, she began to laugh. "They are making a fool of you. You spend every day out in the forest gathering wood while they stay at home." But they're doing work too." "They are making a fool of you." The other bird began to laugh, and while the bird protested and tried to explain the work that his friends were doing, the other bird would not listen. She spread her wings and took flight, laughing all the way. The bird went back to gathering his firewood, but as he gathered one piece after another, he kept thinking to himself, perhaps his friends were making a fool of him. Perhaps he was doing all the work while they sat around the house doing nothing. In the evening, when the bird returned, he saw the sausage sitting by the stove, and he saw the mouse lying in bed, still snoozing. The bird flung down the firewood. "Things have to change. I do all the work, and you two sit around the house doing nothing." The mouse was startled awake. "What do you mean? I spent all morning hauling that heavy bucket. I'm exhausted. And he sits by the stove, cooking dinner. I'd like to see you cook the way he does." "Yes," added the sausage. "Do you think you can cook as good as I can?" The three friends began to argue over their chores and who should do which ones. At last, they decided that they would draw lots and let fate decide which chores they should each do the following day. The bird was the first to draw, and fate decided that he would fetch the water. The mouse would cook dinner, and the sausage would go in search of firewood. And so, the following morning, the sausage set out, squirming and worming his way off into the forest. The bird spread his beautiful wings of purple and blue and flew to the well. He snatched up the bucket and filled it with water. He was surprised how heavy the bucket was once it was full. He flapped his wings with all his might and managed to carry the bucket back to the house. Then he and the mouse worked together to fill the pot upon the stove. After finishing his chores, the bird was exhausted. He went to bed to take a nap, while the mouse set to work adding rice and vegetables to the boiling water, preparing the stew for their evening meal. But as morning turned to afternoon, and afternoon turned to evening, the sausage had not returned. The bird and the mouse were both worried. Something must have happened. "I'll go find him. I know the forest well. I'll find him." The bird spread his beautiful wings of purple and blue, and off he flew out into the forest, fluttering amongst the tall pines till he came to a large clearing, and there, to his horror, he saw the sausage lying still upon the ground, surrounded by scattered firewood. There was a dog looming over the sausage's limp form. "Murderer!" the bird cried. "Murderer!" No, it's not what you think." The dog sat back on his haunches, and the bird could see, there amongst the markings on his chest, a star within a wheel, the sign of a sheriff. "I smelled something suspicious as that sausage came squirming my way, and, I asked him for his papers, and they'd expired. I'm sorry, but he was a bad sausage." The bird could not believe what he was hearing. All these years, he and the mouse had been living with a bad sausage? There was nothing to do but to gather up the firewood, go back home, and tell the mouse everything that had happened. And so the bird did. The mouse was horrified. All these years, he and the bird had been living with a bad sausage? Neither of them knew what to do, but they decided that they'd best eat their meal. And so, while the mouse went to put the finishing touches on dinner, the bird set to work making a fire in the fireplace. The mouse had always seen the sausage hop into the pot before serving the meal, and so he thought that this is what any true chef should do. But a sausage has a thick hide, and a mouse does not. The mouse hopped into the boiling water and stewed himself alive. The bird, hearing a cry from the kitchen, abandoned his sputtering fire and went to see what was wrong. But while he was gone, a spark leapt from the abandoned fire and set the carpet ablaze. Within minutes, the house was filled with black smoke. "Fire! Fire! Gotta get out!" The bird fluttered around in a panic as fire spread up the walls. He escaped through an open window just as the burning roof came crashing down. Perching himself upon the branch of a tree, he looked back. His house was gone. His friends were gone. His beautiful feathers had been burned black as charcoal. There was nothing to do but to fly away into the forest. To this day, that bird is still out amongst the trees of the forest. When the light is right, the shadows of purple and blue can be seen in his blackened form. And though that bird is able to speak, he only sings a sad, mournful lament.
That was Michael Lang telling The Mouse, the Bird, and the Sausage. I'm sitting down with Michael now to get a little background on the story and see where it came from. Thank you, Michael.
Absolutely, Toby.
So I really want to start off with, what? I mean...
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I thought the first time I saw this story. I was looking through a large tome of Brothers Grimm's fairy tales, because they've written so many, or wrote so many as the case may be. And I saw this title, The Mouse, the Bird, and the Sausage, and I immediately had to read this story. And after the first sentence or two, when I discovered that the sausage is a character, I had to read this story and had to find a way to use it, because it really crosses the line of fantasy into completely absurd.
I mean, I completely agree with you that. I mean, the sausage is just random. I mean, when you hear the title, it's like, okay, there's a mouse, there's a bird. I mean, they're fighting over food. Maybe they're sharing a sausage.
Right. Maybe they're going to eat him.
Yeah. But then you just went weird there. They're going to eat him.
Right.
And now the sausage is a character.
Exactly.
And, I mean, we talked a little bit before, but why is that so absurd to us?
I think it is because even with the suspension of disbelief that comes with a fairy tale or with any story, we don't expect our food to be a character. We are okay with a mouse being able to talk because mice run around, they squeak, squeak, squeak. That could be a language we don't understand. Sure, it's able to talk. The mouse and the bird can understand each other. It's a fairy tale. It makes sense, as much as a fairy tale needs to make sense. Yeah. But the sausage...
Yeah. I mean, it's a food item.
Right.
I mean, it's a food item made up of the refuse of other food items.
Exactly.
And, I mean, we talk about, inanimate objects as characters in fairy tales, like a sort of a hero.
Right, the harp and Jack and the Beanstalk.
The talking mirror and Snow White, not to go after the big classics.
But these are things that most of us who listen to stories, we know and can understand that, oh yeah, the mirror talks back to the queen when mirror, mirror on the wall. And I think we can accept this because she's looking in the mirror at the time. Of course there's going to be a face in that mirror. Okay, it's not hers. That's a little weird. It's talking back to her, but this makes sense.
Yeah, it's the magical item, so to speak, as a trope.
Exactly.
I mean, the magical item, the enchanted item.
Right.
It has a reason to be there. There's some central plot aspect that, this harp was enchanted by so-and-so, and its song could be heard by no one else. It's special.
Or there's a curse on this thing that has made it talk.
Right. But now we have a talking object with no raison d'etre.
Right. No reason for it to be talking, other than the fact that apparently in this story, a sausage can talk, and it's accepted.
But what's not accepted is for a sausage to have bad papers.
That is true. It's clearly not acceptable because the sheriff...
He took care of the problem.
He had to take care of the problem, that's right.
And the problem that he was a bad sausage was so out there that the mouse and the bird, who were such dear friends, were more shocked that he was a bad sausage than the fact that their dear friend is, dead.
Right. Yeah, they never seem to really mention it. They're just horrified that they've been living with a bad sausage.
And you've modified this from the original Grimm's.
I have. I did. I've made some little changes along the way, but the ending is the biggest difference. In the original story, the bird also dies.
Okay.
Which gives us kind of a Shakespearean ending that, they're all dead, curtain falls. I didn't really like that for this story because the bird is the one who sets all these things into motion. When he decides or gets it in his head, he's doing all the work and no one else is. And that decision has consequences. And if the bird dies, in the original version of the story, he runs to get water from the well, and in his panic, he falls down the well and drowns. There's really no way for him to understand what he has done, and he doesn't have to live with the consequences of his decision if he dies immediately.
Yep.
And so, in the ending that I wrote, he survives, but we see how he's changed. His plumage is different. He doesn't use his voice the same way anymore. He doesn't live in this house anymore. His house and his friends are gone. And so he has to live with the consequences of his choice.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. So thank you, Michael, for sharing this rather bizarre,
absolutely,
somewhat dark, but very, very interesting tale with us.
It is one of my favorites to tell when there's an audience who can handle a sausage as a character.
Yes. And thank you to our audience out there for tuning in to Coyote's Corner. If you want to hear more stories from Michael, check out his website at coyotesinc.com for his small business, the Coyotes Inkwell. It has a bunch of downloads, a bunch of previous tracks that he and I have recorded. Even has booking information for booking him for your own purposes or mooching off of someone else's if they've already booked him, and you can go see him live and in action.
And as always, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe to the Coyotes Corner so you never miss anything we're doing over here.
And until next time, this has been the Coyotes Corner.